Do you know? Hello everyone, Ryan here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the new Alt J album titled Relaxer. Alt J are a indie rock band from the UK, and they've seen quite a bit of success since their 2012 release An Awesome Wave, which broke out quite big, and they had quite a lot of big songs from there like Tessellate and Breeze Blocks that reached quite a large amount of people, and they had quite a lot of critical acclaim too. And I absolutely think that's an amazing album. I think that was one of the best of that year. And Alt J are actually a very consistent band because each album they've put out so far has been fantastic. They followed it up with This Is All Yours in 2014, which wasn't as good, but it still had a great amount of tracks on there, and a lot of great songs came from it, like Left Hand Free, um, Hunger for the Pine, I think it was called. Hunger of the Pine. Can't quite remember that one, but it was a great song and a lot of great songs from the album. And I think Alt J are definitely one of the bands to be looking out for these days because they're just so prolific with their output. They have quite a unique sound, and it's easily recognizable when you hear the lead singer's voice, as he kind of has this bizarre inflection on his vocals, like wow, like that. And the instrumentation is always quite um, intricate as well. It kind of plays on this kind of folky sound, and there's a lot of going on there, and it's quite an interesting sound. I can see why a lot of people have been polarized by this band, and I think they're fantastic too. And with this new album, Relaxer, it's clear to see once again that these guys have pulled off another great album. This time around, they have pretty much followed the same structure that they've done on previous releases. But the shortcomings to this album come from the slower tracks, I think. I think they're not as interesting as the rest of the quicker tracks, which may just be a fault of my own. Maybe I'm just not as into it. But I believe that on An Awesome Wave, they had slowed down tracks that I found interesting. But this album has a few that don't quite grab me as much as previous Alt J songs, like the House of the Rising Sun, which is a traditional folk song that they have covered here. It was most famously made by The Animals, but on this version, it's far less exciting for me. I think it's just a bit too slow. I like the lavish instrumentation in the background, but it's just really the vocals that are a bit sleepy and don't quite work as well for me. And I do feel quite similar about the track Last Year, which again is quite a slow moving track, but it does feature beautiful vocals from Marika Hackman, um, and that is the part of the song where I am mostly intrigued, because again I think the Alt J lead singer does have a good voice, but there are points where he just sounds a little bit too sleepy on the slower tracks. But one of the tracks that does get it completely right is Adeline, which takes a melody from a Hans Zimmer score, which I think is quite an interesting place to take inspiration from. But this track has a really nice build to it, and it kind of goes like, gets louder and then goes again quieter. I think that track works really well, and the melody to the song is absolutely beautiful as well. They did an excellent job with this track. I do love that Alt J have adapted more folk elements for this new album, because I think that the instrumentals on this album shine the most throughout the whole thing. Like with the opening track 3WW, which has this amazing guitar that crops up like throughout the whole song, like and I really love that in comparison to what the vocals are doing, because I think that's the only shortcoming to this album. I think every now and then I'm just not that interested in what Joe Newman is doing vocally, but it's everything else that's going on in the song that I love the most. But that same thing cannot be said for the track In Cold Blood, which is the shining moment on this album for me. I mean, this song has such a great instrumental. It's fantastic. I think it's the track that every Alt J album has. There's always the one song that stands out above the rest, like Left Hand Free and Breeze Blocks, that are the clear cut singles from the album, and this is one of the best I've heard all year. It's amazing. And also, Hit Me Like That Snare has a fantastic instrumental too. It kind of reminds me of like old school rock from like the 70s. and I feel like they're pulling from that era as well, especially in the vocals. This is another example of where Alt J can really show that they can do multiple genres and ideas, and it still works really well. The album closes off with Pleader, which goes back to that folk sound, and it's actually more of like a psych folk sound. I think it reminds me of like early Grizzly Bear, like from their Yellow House album back in like 2006. It's got that sound to it as well. It sounds a little bit like Fleet Foxes, I think, as well. This is a really beautiful end to the album. So going into this album, I wasn't really sure what to expect because I hadn't listened to any of the singles leading up to it. The album cover kind of put me off a little bit. I was a bit like, what is this album cover? But it's apparently from an old video game, which is kind of a cool idea, but I don't think it really represents what's on the album. But um, yeah, it's much shorter than their older stuff, and I think they've once again released a solid album. It's not like anything like that they've completely drifted away from their old sound. They've just added more folk elements, which I think they kind of were always embracing on their last few albums as well. But this album has a really good length. Maybe could have been a little bit longer, actually. I think it could have done with a few more extra tracks, although some of the tracks are quite long as they are anyway. But I think Alt J are showing that they're still one of the most consistent bands around. They've got a lot of great ideas. A lot of their music is really well made. The lyricism is poetic. And yeah, just a few of the moments on this album I didn't enjoy as much, but still a great album. I still think it's a B, and it's certainly worth checking out. Alt J again, one of the bands around right now that are worth your time, and this album is another good album to their discography. So make sure you check it out. Have a good day.